What up, IB in the building, and we back for another video. I'm back with another positional rankings video of the 2019 to 2020 season. We did point guards, now it's time to move on to my personal top 10 shooting guards in the league based off of this year. Well, not only based off of this year, based off a little bit of what they've done in the past, but a lot of what they've done this year. Now, using that logic, there are a couple players that aren't going to be considered in this ranking due to injury and not playing enough games. Those two players are Klay Thompson and Victor Oladipo. Klay Thompson, he's been out for the entire year, so sadly he cannot qualify. And Victor Oladipo, he was out for most of the year. He came back and played about, I think, less than 10 games. So I'm not really going to consider him because in those 10 games, he didn't really look like himself. With that being said, let's get into the top 10. At number 10, I have shooting guard for the Portland Trail Blazers, CJ McCollum. Now, CJ McCollum, he's one of the better scorers in the entire league, averaging about 22 points per game, and he's a decent facilitator for being a score-first guard, getting about 4 assists per game. Now, all of his positives come on the offensive side of the ball. He's not much of a plus on the defensive side. He's kind of a defensive liability. That's why I can't really put him much higher than being the 10th highest shooting guard in the league. He does what he's good at, and he excels at shooting the ball. He's a good shooter. Maybe his percentages are down a bit this year, but he still is a lethal shooter from outside, and he's a pretty good shot creator, a pretty good number 2 option behind Damian Lillard. So yeah, his percentages are down this year. This year he's shooting 38% from 3. When on his career, he's shot 40% from 3. So if you know CJ McCollum, you know he's a lethal shooter that you don't want to leave open from downtown, even if his percentage is down 2 points. So yeah, undersized shooting guard who's really just a big plus on the offensive side of the ball, kind of a liability on the defensive side, kind of gets you the number 10 spot. In my eyes, the only competition I really had for that 10th spot besides CJ McCollum was Buddy Hield, but I ended up giving the upper hand to CJ McCollum because he's a bit more of a shot creator than Buddy Hield is, and he's a tad bit better of a facilitator. At the number 9 spot, I have the sophomore shooting guard of Oklahoma City Thunder, Shai GilgeousAlexander. Shai GilgeousAlexander is averaging 19 points per game, 6 boards, and 3 assists. His playstyle kind of sets him apart from anybody else in the NBA. He's really a guard who's not overly athletic in terms of speed and jumping ability, but he's just really crafty and skilled in terms of how he gets his points. He likes to get inside using a lot of scoop layups and floaters, and he really likes scoring in the mid-range area. He shoots 35% from 3, which is respectable, but he doesn't shoot a lot of them. And on the defensive side of the ball, he's pretty good mainly because he's lengthy. He's 6'5" and has an incredible wingspan for being 6'5". I think he has a 7-foot wingspan, so that's enabled to help him on the defensive side of the ball. Like I said, since he's not the most athletic 2-guard or guard in general, he kind of gets beat on the perimeter a lot because of a lack of lateral quickness. But he's shown the ability to be kind of disruptive when he does get beat off the dribble. He's able to close out on layup drives and kind of get some chase down blocks in the half court. He averages about 0.7 blocks per game, which is pretty good for a shooting guard. You don't always have to be the most athletic player on the floor to be a good perimeter defender. I think Shai GilgeousAlexander's physical tools of length will help him as he gets older and more experienced in the NBA. You gotta remember, he's only a sophomore and he'll be learning from Chris Paul in Oklahoma City for a couple more years. So I assume and I predict that he'll sooner rather than later become a plus on the defensive side of the ball. For the 8th spot after SGA, we have another young shooting guard. It's gonna be a running theme for this entire video, but at number 8, we have another young shooting guard, the prolific scoring athletic shooting guard in Chicago, Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine's averaging about 25 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists. He's kind of improved his playmaking over the past 2 years. That's kind of been a criticism of Zach LaVine. The criticism is that he's kind of a ball hog and only looks to score. He's kind of increased his playmaking ability playing in Chicago, a team that doesn't really have much scoring outside of Zach LaVine. He's still been able to increase his ability to create for others. Now, Zach LaVine is another 2-guard that isn't much on the defensive side of the ball, but in my opinion, he's not as bad of a defender as CJ McCollum, and he's a better scorer than CJ and SGA. so that's why I ultimately gave him the number 8 spot. And he's also become pretty impactful on the defensive side of the ball this year. Even though he's not a great on-ball defender, he's been able to use his athleticism to get in the passing lane to get steals. He's averaging about 1.5 steals per game. Now, ahead of Zach LaVine for the number 7 spot, we have our first two-way shooting guard on the list. Bona fide two-way shooting guard. Yeah, the first one coming on the list is Jaylen Brown at number 7. This has been Jaylen Brown's breakout year. This year he's averaging 20 points a game, 6 boards, and 2 assists. He's tremendously efficient from the field and from 3. He's shooting at about 50% from the field. Yeah, he's shooting about 38% on about 5.5 3-point attempts per game, which is a great clip for Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown has proved to be this year a bona fide scorer on all 3 levels. Finishing at the rim from 0 to 3 feet, he shoots about 70% from the field, and from 10 to 16 feet, that type of mid-range shot, he's shooting about 50% from the field. He's shooting 42% from 3 to 10 feet, which is kind of like your floater range or your short mid-range shot. And I already spoke on his improved 3-point percentage on a higher clip. But what impresses me most is his shot creation in general. The fact that a lot of the points that he's generating is coming off of his own creation. Earlier on in Jaylen Brown's career, it was going to look like he was just going to be an athletic 3-and-D guard. That was looking like what his potential was going to be. That was looking like his ceiling, an athletic two-way 3-and-D guard. This year, he's proven that he's shattered that ceiling, raised his ceiling as somebody that can be a secondary or tertiary shot creator for your team. Last year, 57% of his 2-pointers were assisted on, and now this year that percentage is down to 47%, meaning that Jaylen Brown is creating a lot more offense for himself. Now, I've only spoke on his offensive praises. I haven't even gotten to the defensive side of the ball. Jaylen Brown came in as a player who could just potentially be a clam god for you, like a long-term lockdown defender on your team. And he's proven that alongside building on his offensive potential, he's established himself as probably one of the premier on-ball perimeter defenders in the league. And he only has more room to grow, develop, become a smarter defender. He already has all the physical tools to be a great defender in the league, and he's playing on a Boston team that emphasizes defense with Brad Stevens as their coach. Honestly, I don't even think Jaylen Brown has reached his full potential. At number 6, coming above Jaylen Brown, we have another two-way shooting guard. This guy is a bit more experienced than Jaylen Brown. We have Jrue Holiday at the number 6 spot. This year, Jrue Holiday is averaging about 20 points per game, 7 assists, and 5 rebounds. He's also getting roughly 2 steals a game, and we'll round up for him. He's getting a block a game as a shooting guard. Now, I already spoke on Jrue Holiday in my Pelicans team breakdown video, but he is an all-around player, like in the most literal form. He's a good shot creator, getting you about 20 points per game, and a lot of it is on his own creation. About 31% of his 2-pointers are assisted on, and 55% of his 3-pointers are assisted on. He's also a good playmaker, getting you 7 assists per game. He's always been a good playmaker because he came into the league as a point guard and slowly but surely transitioned to playing shooting guard when Rondo came onto the Pelicans about 3 years ago. And obviously with Lonzo being on the Pelicans now, he's had to play that 2-guard role, and he's thrived in it. Now, Jrue Holiday has never been known as a great knockdown 3-point shooter. This year on 6 3-point attempts per game, he's shooting 36%. So that's pretty solid, I'd say, for a player who's not really known as a knockdown 3-point shooter. 36% on a high clip is pretty good. Then on the defensive side of the ball, Jrue Holiday is a lockdown defender on the perimeter. I don't need to say much else. If you know Jrue Holiday's game, if you've seen him play, you know he's one of the best perimeter defenders in the entire league, and he was on pace to making an all-defensive team. Now, moving on to the next tier of shooting guards, number 5. This one was kind of hard to place, this guy, but in the end I chose Donovan Mitchell. Now, Donovan Mitchell is a 3rd-year shooting guard in our league. He's averaging about 24 points per game, 4 assists, and 4 rebounds. Now, his scoring hasn't improved much in terms of counting numbers. He went up from 23.8 points per game last year to 24.2 points per game this year, but his efficiency has improved greatly. Last year, he shot 43% from the field, and now this year, he's shooting 45% from the field. Now, Donovan Mitchell is a player who thrives in the mid-range. From 3 to 10 feet, he's shooting 42% from the field. From 10 to 16 feet, he's shooting an incredibly efficient 50% from the field. And from 16 to out in front of the 3-point line, he's shooting 47% from the field, which is pretty efficient from that range. And he's a good three-point shooter, shooting at about 36 or 37% on about 7 attempts per game. When you're undersized, that automatically kind of makes it harder for you to defend bigger two guards. Like, your average two guard is going to be about 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", and Mitchell's going to have his troubles trying to defend those type of players. But in my opinion, he's always shown the ability to at least make life hard for them in terms of getting over screens, fighting over them. But then that's kind of why I wanted to put him a bit higher on this list. But then I thought a lot of kind of Donovan Mitchell's defensive praises come with playing with Rudy Gobert, the Stifle Tower. Because when you have Rudy Gobert down there sitting inside the paint, waiting for the pick and roll ball handler to come into the paint, all the Utah Jazz perimeter defenders have to do is literally get over the screen, take away the three-point shot, funnel the ball handler going towards Rudy Gobert, and the perimeter defenders just have to cut off the pick and roll man by getting in front. So the Utah Jazz philosophy is literally to funnel the perimeter defenders to Rudy Gobert. So that kind of makes life easier for everybody on Utah Jazz's perimeter defense. And another thing that really brought me down a peg on Donovan Mitchell's defensive impact is his defensive rating. Utah Jazz have a 111 defensive rating with Donovan Mitchell on the court. And with him off the court, they have an 106 defensive rating, which is about 5 to 6 defensive ratings better. Remember, your defensive rating, the lower your defensive rating, the better it is. And that really doesn't make sense. A lot of his minutes are coming with Rudy Gobert. So you would think that his on-off splits would be a lot higher in terms of defensive rating because a lot of his minutes are coming with Rudy Gobert. But apparently that's not the case. The only way for the Utah Jazz to have a significantly worse defensive rating with Donovan Mitchell on the court than they do with him off the court is for them to suck ass with Donovan Mitchell on the court and Rudy Gobert off the court, and that is the case. So yeah, Donovan Mitchell at number 5. Number 4, I have kind of a player who not broke out, but he really improved a lot of his counting numbers this year. And that's the shooting guard for the Washington Wizards, Bradley Beal. This year, Bradley Beal is completely playing without John Wall, or was completely playing without John Wall, and that showed in the stats. This year, Bradley Beal is putting up 31 points a game, 6 assists, and 4 rebounds. So, Bradley Beal is literally the offense for the Washington Wizards. John Wall's been out of the lineup for most of the past 3 seasons, but this is I think this is the first year where John Wall's been out of the lineup for the entire season. Bradley Beal has been putting up the numbers in kind of in replacement of John Wall. And same with his scoring stats. I mean, Bradley Beal, even with John Wall in the lineup, was establishing himself as the number 1 scorer for the Washington Wizards. Now, I know the Wizards are trash, and I don't really buy into the empty stats narrative. Like, somebody has to put up the points for your team. This is what Devin Booker's been dealing with his entire career on the Suns. The empty stats narrative. Like, it's not a narrative. Somebody has to score. And it's even more impressive if you're able to put up upwards of 27 a game when you're literally the offense, when you're literally the focal point of the offense. The defense knows that nobody on the court is really going to score or kill your defense like that besides Bradley Beal, Devin Booker. And the fact that they're still able to put up 27, 28, 29, 30 points a game on decent efficiency, that just speaks to their talent level. Now, I know Bradley Beal isn't much of a defender, but literally nobody on the Washington Wizards team is. I think they're dead last in defense. Like, literally. I mean, when you're playing like half of your season with Isaiah Thomas, the definition of defensive liability, Rui Hachimura, he's a rookie. He's not really known for his defense. He's really known for energy type of defense, and he's a rookie. Rookie defending is really tough. Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm not going to put all the defensive blame on Beal. Now we get into the top 3 shooting guards in the entire league. At number 3, coming in above Bradley Beal, I have the player who's kind of been known for being the poster boy of the empty stats narrative type of meme. Number 3, light-skinned homie, Devin Booker. This year, Devin Booker is putting up 26 points per game, 6.5 assists, and 4 rebounds. Similar stats to Bradley Beal, yes, but Devin Booker is doing it a bit more efficiently. Beal was shooting roughly 45% from the field, while Devin Booker is shooting about 49% from the field. Now, Devin Booker and Bradley Beal's stats are very similar. They're both 2 guards, tremendous scorers that have had to lead their team in assists due to lack of playmaking outside of them. So, not only are their stats similar, but their games are also similar. They score first shooting guards that aren't much on the defensive side of the ball. Now, I will say Devin Booker has improved this year. Seems like he's a bit more invested in getting rid of that no defense narrative. But the Suns are still a better defensive team with Booker off the floor. Their defensive rating is 7 points better with Booker off the floor, and that's inexcusable. But speaking back to his offensive carry job, the Suns are a 13-point worse offensive rating team with Booker off the floor. That is remarkable in a bad way. And also, the narratives around Beal and Booker are remarkably similar. I mean, they're both on trash teams and they both get hit with the empty stats narrative. And it's really unfair to both of them. So on the surface, Beal and Booker kind of just seem like right here in terms of ranking them shooting guards wise, and they really are that close. But the reason why I have Booker coming in slightly above Beal is the efficiency, the advanced metrics. Booker, his on-off splits are 6.1 positive, while Beal's on-off splits were 2.3 negative. That's kind of why, or a big reason why I have to give Booker the edge. And also, in my opinion, I think Booker would also be putting up, his points are not at Beal's points per game. Beal's putting up 30, Booker's putting up 26. But if you watch basketball, you know Booker is an offensive bucket. I think Booker would put up an upwards of 30 points on that Washington Wizards team. If you plug in Booker for Beal on that Washington Wizards team, I think Booker would still put up 30 points just like Beal's doing, and he'd probably do it a bit more efficiently. That's just my opinion, personal opinion. At number 2, I have one of the best, one of the premier elite two-way wing players in the entire league, basically in the past 5 years. At number 2, Paul George. This year, Paul George putting up 21 points per game, 4 assists, and 6 rebounds. He's shooting 43% from the field, 39% from 3, and is getting you 1.3 steals per game. Now, I'll admit, Paul George's numbers are way down from last year. I mean, almost across the board. And this year, Paul George just really has not been the same. His scoring is down, his efficiency from the 2-pointer range is down a lot, like a lot. His mid-range shooting splits are kind of bad, to be honest. Getting to the rim, he's still converting at a high level. He's shooting 70% from 0 to 3 feet, which is crazy, as a wing, 2 guard. But when you get to the mid-range shot, his numbers really tail off. From 3 to 10 feet, he's shooting 35%. From 10 to 16, he's shooting 39%. And from 16 to the 3-point line, he's shooting 38%. Yeah, all those numbers are pretty shaky. And then we even get to the defensive side of the ball, where he's still a lockdown defender on ball, but he's just not as disruptive. He was getting 2.2 steals per game last year. This year he's down to 1.3 steals. And basically this entire spiel on Paul George has been me negatively talking down on him. And he's still the number 2 best shooting guard in the league in my eyes, because he's just that impactful of a two-way defender. And honestly, a lot of it is the injury. The injury, whatever happened to his shoulder, it's kind of been weird, his management of the shoulder. In the playoffs a year ago and the regular season this year, his shoulders, they have to be bothering him because his efficiency is down. He was kind of subpar in that playoff series against Portland. He hasn't been able to play as much games this year. He's been on load management. He didn't play as many games, or I think he sat out the first 10 games or something to come into the season. Basically, what I'm getting at, a lot of his numbers being down, I think are attributed to his shoulder injuries. Hopefully, he can get back to full health because, like I said, last year, he was an MVP candidate and a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. I don't think he'll ever be an MVP candidate again, but I think he can get back to that OKC Paul George that we saw last year. And at the number 1 shooting guard spot, I mean, it really isn't much of a debate, honestly, and it hasn't been much of a debate for the past, 5 years? Number 1 shooting guard in the entire league, undoubtedly, James Harden. Literally one of the most lethal offensive weapons that we have ever seen. There's a lot of hate and slander that goes at James Harden's name, and a lot of it does come from me, because when I'm watching the Sunday Showcase game on ABC and James Harden or the Rockets are playing and I have to watch James Harden, I'm not gonna lie to you, his play style is kind of appalling in terms of viewership. The man throws his body around for fouls. It's really not appealing. The ISO step back over and over again, especially when he's bricking, it's really horrible to watch. But at the end of the day, you gotta respect that man's craft. I mean, it takes incredible skill to draw as many fouls as he does, to take and make as many three-point shots that are contested from his own creation, as many of those as he does over an entire season. And the narrative of James Harden for most of his career was his memes on defense, in terms of his Shaq in the full highlights because of his defense. Defense. That's the type of thing that's been harped on Harden in the past. But over the past 2 to 3 years, his on-ball defense has improved, and he's put in a lot of effort in terms of his on-ball defense. Even when he was really a well below average defender, he was still impactful in terms of steals. He was able to get on-ball steals like 3 years ago, and he still gets on-ball and passing lane steals this year. He's averaging about 2 steals per game. So in terms of what he lacks in terms of on-ball defense, the boring stuff, getting over screens, rotations, and just basically being engaged on defense, he kind of makes up for in terms of his kind of IQ type of disruptions and steals. And James Harden, he's a big body, and he's proven that he can not stop, but he's somebody that you have to get through in terms of low post scoring. And that's really important, especially because of the Rockets play style. They are literally switching everything, like literally. I mean, they did it a lot 2 years ago, even with Capella on the lineup. But now they literally switch everything, with everybody being below the height of 6'7", and James Harden's ability to body up with big men, centers and power forwards in the post, and kind of a lot of times stop them, not even gonna lie, from scoring on him in the post is really vital, especially for this Rockets defensive philosophy. And I just want to get back to Harden's offense, because obviously that's the strength of his game, but some of the advanced metrics, they're astounding. Only 14% of his 2-pointers are assisted on, and only 15% of his 3s are assisted on. That is unheard of. I don't even think Kobe had that type of unassisted percentage. And I'm not saying that because James Harden's 2-point percentage assisted rate and 3-point percentage assisted rate are lower than Kobe's, because of that James Harden is better than Kobe. In no such way am I saying that, like, Kobe fan over here. But what I'm saying is, you have to give credit where credit is due. The fact that he's able to do that, like sustain rates of where in 2016 to 2017, less than 10% of his 2-pointers were assisted on. Same with 2017 to 2018. He's been doing this type of stuff in Houston, run by Mike D'Antoni, for the past 8 years. He's literally been the offense, the focal point of the offense, getting besides this year and the past couple years with Chris Paul on his team and now Russell Westbrook on his team, there's been no playmaking outside of James Harden on that team. He has literally been the offense for 7 going on 8 years, and he doesn't even miss that many games. There hasn't been a season in Houston where he's played below 70 games. So he's been doing his ISO shit where he's literally the only person on the floor moving for the Houston Rockets offense. He's been doing that for 8 seasons, borderline playing all 82 games every year. And he's been scoring efficiently. Yeah, you have to give him credit. And I'm giving him credit by saying he's the #1 best shooting guard in the entire league, and there's nobody that's close, to be honest.
Quick recap.
Number 10, CJ McCollum. Number 9, Shai GilgeousAlexander. Number 8, Zach LaVine. Number 7, Jaylen Brown. Number 6, Drew Holiday. Number 5, Donovan Mitchell. Number 4, Bradley Beal. Number 3, Devin Booker. Number 2, Paul George. And number 1, James Harden.